Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1password. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, and zero-day exploits. It ensures 24/7, 365 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. If your organization is ready to enhance cyber resilience, we have important insights for you. The 2024 Level Blue Futures Report sheds light on how rapid computing changes affect IT visibility. Our research reveals that while IT leaders see positive outcomes, 85% acknowledge increased risk. In this report, we identify the barriers to cyber resilience, the challenges impacting cybersecurity, and the business contexts that reveal operational issues. You'll also discover what's on the horizon and 5 essential steps for prioritizing cyber resilience. Get your complimentary copy of this crucial research today. Visit securityweekly.com/levelblue. Cybersecurity simplified. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. This interview is sponsored by Okta. Today we're talking about Okta's annual event, Oktane. We're excited to have Harish Peri with us today. He's the Senior VP of Product Marketing at Okta. Welcome, Harish. How are you?
I'm doing just great. We are a couple of weeks out from Oktane. Oktane is on the brain for everyone here at Okta, and we are looking forward to welcoming our customers or partners and anyone that wants to build the future of identity with us. So really, really fired up right now.
Yeah, it looks like a big event. It's you're having it in Vegas. It's at Caesar's Forum, and how many years has Okta been doing this event?
Oh, it even predates my time, but we've been around
It's
since
not new.
'09.
It's not new,
It's not
right?
new. It's not new.
Yeah.
And there's continues to be a need for an event like this that focuses on identity and the need for identity and for everyone that is in the identity space to get together and connect and share best practices and just learn from each other. There continues to be a need for an event like this to happen. So we've been doing this for a while, and we will continue doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah, and we know that Security Weekly is owned by CRA, who also owns the Identiverse conference. So yeah, we talk a lot about identity here. It comes up often. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we will talk some more details about Octane before we end. But yeah, I kind of want to level set on identity and where it is today. I think people listening to this are probably on all points of the spectrum in terms of identity maturity and what features they're using and what they're looking at. But I'd be hard pressed to find anyone that I've talked to recently that doesn't have some kind of journey going on. Nobody's just sitting still with identity. There's just constantly work to do there. And I remember when I joined the industry, like what was brand new and interesting was SSO and MFA, right? We had RSA tokens, the hard tokens. So we had those on our keychains. We had our Blackberries on our belts, and I remember, we looked at single sign-on from not Nortel. What is the name of the company? They're long gone now. They used to be like the big competitor with Microsoft, and the original reason that they went through the antitrust lawsuits. And the name is evading me right now, but we tried out their SSO product. And I remember that being brand new at the time, the idea that you would just have a single username and password that got you into everything. And that was magical, seemed magical back then.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Like that's a lot of where this industry began, and the shift of a lot of companies to the cloud is what propelled the growth of Okta, starting in '09 and continuing into today and into the future. But I think it's always good to take just a bit of a step back, and you almost want to envision like back in the day, right? Like you were talking about Blackberries in your belt, and before we jumped on, I was talking about how the last language I coded was Java, so I'm dating
Yeah.
myself too. But back in the day, it was very much there was one front door, and then that got you inside the fort, and there was one wall around it. That's what technology was like. You owned it, even if you had a private cloud, that was about it. But if you look at technology today, you can almost imagine a constellation, right? Every company, no matter how advanced, how cloud forward or on-prem they are, if they dig into their technology stack, they've got on-prem applications, cloud applications, shadow apps that may be built by their teams that they didn't know about. They have devices, they have APIs, they have containers, microservices. Your entire technology landscape is literally a constellation of things that are all connected to each other. And every one of those little things, guess what? It's got a front door. And so
Mhm.
identity, we have this phrase internally, which is identity is security, because it doesn't matter if you've got the best kind of, endpoint or network or cloud security. Those are critical part pieces. But unless you're able to listen to who is knocking at the front door and detect if they are a good person or a bad person, take action, and then prevent them from spreading if they do break in, nothing matters. And so identity has really become this kind of platform that underpins all other security investments. And that has to do with just the fact of where technology is from an enterprise perspective. So yeah, that's kind of the big shift. It's like one login to get into everything, absolutely.
Yeah.
But actually having, an intelligent technology that's listening to all logins at all doors and being able to take action on it if something does happen fast, that's the next wave of where things are going. And it puts Okta in an interesting position because the one thing that we do really well, and we do a lot of things really well, the one thing that's like core to our DNA and that we've done for the last 15 years and we're going to keep doing is integrations. We integrate to anything and everything under the sun. And that's, I
Yeah.
joke internally, like we're an integrations company as much as we are an identity company, because if there's an app, if there's a service, if there's a workload, if there's a machine, we will find a way to hook into that. And by hooking into that, we can then, help organizations control access, control provisioning, governance, entitlements, all those things, including security. And that kind of web of integrations is what helps us to essentially provide this security blanket across the enterprise. I love this stuff, so I get really fired up talking about it. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
Identity is very similar to security itself in that security is this kind of secondary layer that sits on top of everything, so you can put any word, security before or after pretty much anything, related to the business. And that's a thing that somebody has to think about or worry about. And, because identity is how we access things, not just human identity, but machine identity as well. That's also that layer that kind of is attached to everything. And yeah, I think you've got a good Lego metaphor for that, do you not?
Yes, 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 yes. You've heard the Lego thing. So imagine the following, right? Like if you look at an average organization, so when I say average, I mean a company that's not a tech first company or security company, a manufacturing company or company where tech and security is not their main thing. If you look at their enterprise stack today, it resembles a lot of like a Lego bag that maybe, and I have young kids, so I speak in these terms, but it resembles like a bag that's got some toys in it. There's Legos, there's Lincoln Logs, there's Magnetiles, there's all these different things. And you reach in and you're like, not exactly sure what's in there.
Mhm.
The way we think about what identity can do is essentially become that bottom Lego plate on which everything sits, right? And the other thing we're doing is essentially by saying, hey, look, every Lego hooks in a standardized way. That's the other big push that we're trying to make over time is how do we create the same way in which every app, every microservice, every workload, every machine, every device connects into a
Mhm.
single substrate basically. And then once it connects, it lights up because what happens is it says to the enterprise, hi, I'm here. I'm discoverable. I'm governable. I'm entitleable. I'm able to be SSO'd. I'm also sharing my signals, et cetera, et cetera. And that essentially lights up your enterprise in a way that allows you to secure everything. So the Lego metaphor, it works for me. I don't know. Are you tell me what you think of that.
I think you can take that metaphor further because, part of the importance of that plate is it makes your Lego creation portable. So you can now pick up and move around your Lego creation, without grabbing it directly and risking breaking it. So it allows you to move it around without breaking it, which, I think is a metaphor that works pretty well for identity, because you do want the identities to be portable. One of the things we worry about is, moving from parent company to subsidiary, or laterally, different jobs within the company. We've got to, we want to maintain that identity, but also understanding that privileges are probably going to change. Access rights and things like it's one of the big challenges is, if you move out of HR, you should not retain access to that HR data. That is very important to keep that locked down.
Yeah, and you can take that analogy further and say, okay, if everything sitting on the Lego plate is an enterprise thing, meaning it's an app, it's a device, it's a whatever, then there's still people. Because identity is ultimately it's people and machines, but primarily people. It we can also you have a way to determine or should the right people actually touch that Lego, right? If it's a nefarious actor that shows up, you can buzz them. I mean, I'm taking the analogy a little bit far, but you can kind of you need to see all of your entry points and have the right posture and governance across all of them to be able to say, is this person who's knocking on the door the right person at the right time for the right amount of time? But to get there, you actually have to be able to see everything first, understand it, define your posture, to then be able to activate it. And identity literally is the one thing that connects uniformly across everything else. And it's just to get pedantic for a second, we talk about the pillars of security, or IAM, EDR, XDR, network. Identity is almost like a platform that cuts across all of them because it is also listening to signals from the other parts of the security stack and helping you understand if that signal is worth doing something with and taking an action with. And in a sense, it helps you extract more ROI from your other security investments. So there's something more meta about identity there too.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because, the thing I've been asking kind of the SIM industry for forever. I was a chief incident handler, for large financial services firms for 5 years of my career, and, you know, almost always an identity comes into play when you're, working an investigation. And immediately what you want is you want kind of a profile, that tells you, okay, here's who this person is, here's the job they do, here's what their normal day-to-day stuff looks like it's normal for them to go to these websites, here's the 4 devices, that they access corporate resources with, and, here's how often they use them, here's the locations they're coming from. Like, yeah, I've always wanted like a one-page profile of an employee. So then now, my brain, which human brains are great at pattern matching, I can then look at that profile and look at the data I'm looking at and see if there's anything that sticks out that's abnormal, or because I don't know what employees normal day to day looks like. I don't know what devices they normally have. So this is a process that can sometimes take you hours to pull that data from different locations, piece it together. But at the end of the day, that one pager that an incident responder needs in those situations, uh, is a picture of an identity. You know,
Yeah, and even better is what if the device itself, or there's a technology on your device that's checking that all the pieces of the profile are met, right?
mhm.
It isn't just username, password, it's username, and it isn't just an MFA token. It's also, we were talking about VPN right before we jumped on.
Yeah,
We look at, hey, are you on VPN as a potential
right.
signal to say you are who you are because that's part of the policy. There's a bunch of other things that you can check to essentially say that one pager, the technology is checking if that one pager has all the things checked off. Then you are actually who you say you are on the device that you're supposed to have in the place that you're supposed to be accessing it from, accessing the thing that you're allowed to access. So
Yeah.
it's so we want to get to a place where the incidents are minimized. But yes, I see the need for proactive and reacting. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're kind of hinting at like let's complete our walk through the years. Yeah, I looked it up, and it was Novell I was thinking of. Novell's had a single sign-on product that we tested out back in 2004, 2005, something like that, when Novell was still around. Um, and then coming up through the years, we had access management, IGA, and bringing it up to the present. Something you were hinting about there. There's during the authentication process, I think the first place I saw this was maybe Duo, where it would do checks like, do you have AV turned on, running? Is it up to date? There are certain things we want to be present on your machine or a certain state before we allow you to access resources. So I'm not sure what the term for that is, but then we get into
It's all device
continuous.
posture, it's like
Yeah,
it's basically like there's signals coming from the device
right.
that will reassure, you know, that basically reassures us that you are who you are.
Yeah,
And you are, and it's not somebody impersonating you, and it's not there isn't a session hijack going on.
right.
So there's a lot of signal you can get from the device. And also, now devices have these cryptographically encrypted hardware tokens that are built deep into the machine, and getting signals from that too is another piece of device posture. But you mentioned PAM and IGA. I think we can't lose track of that. But the way we
Okay.
think about it is it's all unified, because at the end of the day, see, these are like, they're categories that exist. But as far as an organization goes, they're trying to do, they're essentially, they're on this continuum, right? They want to make sure that they're able to holistically define their entire identity security posture, which means which accounts, which applications need what kind of privilege, what don't need what kind of privilege. That definition is important. And being able to scan for anomalies, that's one part. And that a little bit of that is PAM, a little bit of that is governance. They also need to be able to activate the posture once it's defined. So it says who has access to what from what device at what time for what amount of time. That's a big part of PAM as well, as like you get root access to some Kubernetes cluster for a certain amount of time because you are who you say you are. And the third piece, actually, which we don't talk about enough, is also protecting identity in real time. And so this whole cycle of like definition, activation, protection, all working in concert, that's how we see this unification of identity security.
Yeah,
And the other, like those are subsets, PAM ID, they're categories. But from a customer outcome perspective, it is, do I have a holistic, actionable, real-time, data-driven security picture? That's where we see more and more customers going. And identity is becoming the center of that entire thing. Just because of the technology is just so fragmented, So
yeah.
that's where we see.
And it's interesting, the consumerization of enterprise, I think, has had a big impact. People don't want to have hardware RSA keys, that they have to remember to bring with them. Though, we kind of saw the industry get back to that with security keys. Now people carry around these security keys, and people don't want to have to log in multiple times a day all day long. So we saw biometrics come in and make logging in easier. And you're talking about continuous authentication, where in the consumer world, like, how often do you log into your email on your phone? Right, like, you do it once when you get your phone, and then you do it again when you get a new phone, right? Unless something happens. And there are cases where you want to be able to log out across all your apps. So you've got, I think, universal logout is one of the things we're talking about here. But certainly, continuous authentication becomes important when we've got this OAuth token that's long lived, that allows us to stay logged in for long periods of time, like Slack, for example. Yeah, enterprise Slack, nobody's logging into that on a regular basis. But if you detect any anomalies, any weird behaviors, anything like that, or if it looks like that OAuth token has moved from one machine to another, which is very popular with, we've got info stealer malware that will get on somebody's machine, scoop up all those authentication tokens, and then sell them on a black market. So we want to be able to detect that kind of stuff, not just authenticate once, the first time, and then trust indefinitely. Like, we just can't do that anymore.
No, it's like trust but verify, right? Like that's kind of where, and yeah, there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of investments that are happening there. Like obviously the simple things like breach password detection, but also on the consumer side, like being able to understand what's a bot versus not, because a lot of times these bots are just hammering consumer websites using stolen credentials or token, session tokens that may have been hijacked. So also being able to know which tokens are actually compromised versus not, and then yeah, being able to trigger logouts across anywhere that may have happened. And again, the key to that is to be, you have to start by saying, is there a brain or the Lego plate or whatever else you want to use that's listening to all entry points? And if there's a something, you see something, you got to do something, right? So you see something flagged in one part of your enterprise, log everybody else out. So even if a threat actor is trying to enter from a different point, they're
Yeah.
blocked. So yeah, it's a fascinating time that we're living in. Identity, especially where the doctor, like we've come such a long way from it being a thing that drove a clean experience to now that's table stakes and the security outcomes are just tremendous. So it's an exciting time to be in a devil.
Yeah. And I find it interesting. Like I've always thought of identity as a core part of security. But this year, I've talked to a lot of identity folks, founders in the space, and people who've been in the space for a while. And identity security is like a new buzzword now, all of a sudden. And talking about, detection and response with identity, making sure the identity logs, are consumed and analyzed, and that's part of the whole thing. Which seems kind of odd to me because I remember when first setting up a SIM, identity was always one of those key things we had to plug in there, because I had to put together, those, in fact, one of the big projects I did when I was on the financial services side was redoing RACF for US Bank, because it was just, the mainframe was a mess. Like one person's profile being copied from another person's profile. And that's just how we gave people access back in the day. Like
I remember
you get
that. Who's the model user? And then you model
right.
that from
You get Dave's that, and over time that just becomes a mess, and you have to kind of talk to people. What do you actually need to do your job, and rebuild the roles altogether. And hopefully that's easier to do today, and there's less drift. But like we were talking about, as people move departments internally and stuff like that, um, yeah, unless you have a really tight process there, I imagine that still happens.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, overprivilege, joiner, mover, leaver, like these sound like things that just should just be happening. But it's, I think there's a little bit of like, companies first need to shine a light on what's even going on. I would think that a lot of companies for whom this isn't a number one priority wouldn't even know where there are accounts, either human or API, that have almost like God access to certain data,
Yeah.
and there's a person who has access to it that isn't there anymore, right? Or there's a machine account that's just quietly updating data through an API and pulling data out. Like maybe that there's a reason for that to exist, but governing that and proact and actively making that a C-level concern, that's the light that needs to be shined or shown, if you will, on all of this. And it really has to do with the fact that I think a lot of organizations haven't fully grasped how how they're just in the technology business.
Mhm.
Like the fact that so much of their critical data and so much of the things that can essentially like bring their company to a halt is controlled by technology. That
Yeah.
realization, I think, is it sounds trite, but it's just that there's malicious actors that know that better than organizations and take advantage of that. That's the problem.
Well, and we've kind of seen that highlighted in certain industries, industries where, tech startups have gotten into the automotive industry, so some of these like new electric car companies are, more software companies than anything else, or at least they have a strong software competency from day one. Whereas, some of the 100-plus-year-old auto manufacturers have really struggled with it, and you can see it in the products, this kind of slow realization that with IoT devices also, like all of a sudden toilet manufacturers and you know are putting computers into products, and and yeah, there's issues with that, that's a lot of the vulnerabilities we see in headlines and things like that, like, kids' toys that are taking photos of them and uploading it to the cloud, just, some very,
all those
very
scenarios from all those scenarios from those cheesy 90s movies, where there was the one hacker that was drinking a lot of Dr. Pepper, like that's
yeah,
real now. So like
yeah.
that's happening.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, really, you were talking about shining a light on it. I do a lot of advisory calls on large language model using generative AI inside a company, and that's another thing that's kind of shining a light on like data hygiene and governance issues, which are closely tied to identity because the data you have access to, is based on your account, like Microsoft Copilot. When you're using that, it has access to whatever data you have access to. And as you were talking about, maybe there's data you have access to that you shouldn't have access to, and you don't realize it. And what we're seeing now is people using these generative AI tools. The generative AI tool is the way they're discovering they have access to data they shouldn't have access to. It is the thing shining the light on the fact that we've got governance and hygiene issues with both identity and data.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, the question that needs to be asked now is there's a big rise in AI agents. That's the next kind of like one big innovation coming out of this wave. Well, the question to be asked is, what is an AI agent? Is it a person? Is it a machine? Is it something in between? And does it need to be governed the same way as somebody with privileged access needs to be governed? And then you have to ask the question, like, retrieval augmented generation is great, but that just opens up the entire world for an agent to go and suck data in from maybe places it shouldn't be going to. So that, there is a whole sector of like data governance and things like that. But before you even get into that, it's like the thing that is going to take the action on the data that's being governed. What is that thing? And how do we govern that thing? That is, I think, the question of the hour, especially with all this AI innovation that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and certainly as you're talking about pulling all this stuff together, I think one of the big challenges in identity is just understanding, that complex web of access controls and privileges. Back I remember watching the Google Beyond Core presentation. That so they built like one of the first uh, zero trust trials basically on their own business after the Aurora attacks in 2010. And, they talked about the toughest piece of that was just to figure out what people should have access to. They said like it took them a couple of years, like a solid 2 years, to get a good employee directory together and nail down what people should and shouldn't have access to. Only after that could they start building this kind of zero trust framework, where they started restricting things like that because it would have just been a mess. It would have died otherwise, this project, because you would have been stopping people from doing their jobs. It would have been, created a huge amount of friction, especially across a company that large.
Yeah, yeah. You're touching on like what people have access to. I think if you connected back to the AI point you were saying a second ago, it you almost have to rethink what is a thing that someone has access to. Because is it data? Is it a resource that some agent can go and get access to? So it does shine a light on the construct of fine grained authorization, because
Yeah.
it's no longer that you're getting into an app that has very clearly defined functions that are administrable from a console. Like now you're talking about accessing various parts of applications, various pieces of data. So almost zooming out or stepping back and saying, how do I even define the pieces of my organization that are accessible, and
Yeah.
then putting an authorization layer that's incredibly fine grained. And that, I think the need for fine grained authorization is going to get even more and more important as we move into this AI world, because the granularity of what AI agents and these algorithms can access gets so small that it isn't something that a human can do just by checking on a bunch of boxes. And you missed the wrong box, you've introduced a security
Yeah.
hole.
Well, and talking about fine grained access control, also we're kind of getting into what I get excited about with identity, which is one of the other dimensions is time. Is like just in time access to things. The idea that I remember the first time, you know, s- somebody, I forget where I heard this, it was probably after DevOps became a thing, but like the idea that, hey, yeah, I'm an admin, but that doesn't mean that I'm logged into my, God level privileges all the time. Like that would be insane, right? If I get fished, then, I get fished with, full access to stuff. So I started seeing things like, the concept of a, access control vending machine, like you only get access to this resource just for the amount of time that you need it and no more. Maybe as an admin I only need those elevated privileges for 5 minutes once a month. So why
And
why would I walk?
elevated privileges to what, right? To maybe
Right,
just to one container or
right.
just to one Lambda or something like that, not even the entire machine. So
Yeah,
that's the whole thing of like right resource, right time for the right amount of time. So yeah,
yeah.
we're saying the same thing. Yeah, it's
And
pretty
like
cool.
maybe a metaphor is like walking around with your entire savings in cash in your pockets at all times, right? No, we don't do that. We leave it in a bank. We let somebody else protect it until the moment we need it, and then that's also a just in time situation where we just take it out when we need it. And these days we never even touch it in cash. It ends up being a transaction. And we lean on service providers to handle that transaction. So yeah, transactional authorization, the transactional privileges, like this whole concept is very exciting to me because it reduces so much attack surface, particularly at a time when your engineers, your developers, your sysadmins, they're the ones being targeted by attackers because they have access to the production infrastructure that ransomware crews can use to take down your operations and put pressure on you to pay a ransom.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, what else are we seeing? At this conference, we the theme is we're at this inflection point where identity is coming together as a platform, and we've got some new approaches to securing things. What are some of the things we haven't mentioned yet? That we can look forward to at Octane.
I think so. So from a Octane perspective, so just to remind everyone, this is the kind of like a big identity event of the year. It's going to be Vegas. It's going to be fun. I would not being facetious when I'm saying it's going to be star-studded. We've got
Oh yeah,
Michael
I
J.
saw that
Fox is
Michael
going to be
J.
there.
Fox.
Alex, yeah, and Alex Honnold's going to be there. I mean, that's some real heavy hitters. We think we're doing important stuff, but those guys are at another level. So there's a lot we can learn from them at a personal level, and then just from our customers. We love our customers. We're going to have a bunch of them in our keynotes, in our sessions, sharing their stories, because that's how everyone can really learn. We can say what we can say, but our customers are the ones that are gonna really help us move forward because they're using our stuff, to better their companies. So we've got that going on. We have our partners who are showing up, and we have an entire partner summit dedicated to them, because the key in this business is we have to go far together on this with and we have partners from large systems integrators all the way to like people that are working with smaller companies. And there's something in this for everybody, for our customers, for our partners, for attendees. Come one, come all is going to be the fantastic identity event of the year. And to go back to the other part of your question, so we talked a lot about security, and there's going to be a ton of content that's going to go even into more detail about our point of view on the future of identity security. Come to the main keynote. It's going to be a lot of fun. But there's another side to this, which is, as much as identity is about security, identity is security. Identity is also about helping companies connect with their end customers at a deeper level to help drive revenue growth. If you look at macroeconomic conditions, everybody's looking for an angle right now. Maybe
Mhm.
spending isn't exactly where it used to be, but that's okay. These are the times where companies, especially those that have end consumers, need to figure out new angles by which they can create experiences for their consumers that are secure but also exciting, right? bad login processes, bad sign up processes are the number one reason that companies aren't able to convert. And if you can't convert, you're not able to build lifetime value, which is where the real money is. And so
Mhm.
we're going to be talking about a lot of advancements that's going to make it easier for developers, because developers are what makes identity happen to our end users. So we have a lot of advancements for developers to build those experiences that are clean, simple, exciting, pixel perfect, that have
Not
security
having
baked
to
in.
log into, type a password with a TV remote. Like,
Passwordless, man, passkeys, that's a big, big, big deal on the consumer side. So there's gonna be a bunch of content around that too, and how experience married with security is another frontier on the identity side. And the other part that you can learn a lot about is the data is a big part of this too, because once you create experiences
mhm,
that your consumers actually want to connect with, and you build a relationship at a brand level with that consumer, then
certain
you can go
insights.
on a journey, exactly, of gathering data in a non-creepy way. That's the
Yeah,
future, right? People will offer up data if there is something in it for them and it isn't done in some shady way. And identity is the thing that makes that happen.
mhm,
Because if you've got the right experience that's easy to get into, and you ask them a new question every time. Hey, what's your age range? What's your favorite sport? Then what you can do is you can create a profile about that customer and give them the kind of content or product that they're actually looking for. And so
yeah,
in a world where, cookies and all those things may be phasing out, or people are getting much more privacy conscious, doing it above board in a way that's identity first, that's the other big hook. So security is one huge thing, but revenue growth by gathering the right data, that's the other side. So we have a lot of content around that as well, Octane. So there's something for everybody at
yeah,
Octane.
very yeah, yeah, the consumer side of it gets very interesting with consumer identity, absolutely. I also hear attendees all get free puppies. That was just a thing that I
Well,
heard.
depends. If you have the right device posture and you're able to prove you are who you say you are, right person, right place, right time, maybe. But that's a way. I can neither confirm nor deny the puppy comment. I am not in charge of the puppy budget, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so that's literally one of the things on the list is there is puppy adoption going on, and you can play with puppies every day. There's pickleball, there's all kinds of, fun stuff going on outside the more serious, industry talks and so yeah.
Yeah, there's also you can also learn a lot about what we're doing from an Okta for Good perspective. So our whole philanthropic side and all the work we're doing to really level up the cybersecurity community and create
Mhm.
more opportunity for people looking to get into that industry. There's a lot of information about that as well. And just a quick note, this is all connected really to our what we call our Okta secure identity commitment. So everything I
Mhm.
touched on about identity security, yes, it's a core part of our product, and we spend a lot of time talking about product and industry, but a big thing about our DNA is the fact that we know that we have a responsibility to the industry and help lead the industry in the fight against identity attacks.
Yeah,
And so we launched our secure identity commitment last Octane. We made a tremendous amount of progress against that. Come to Octane to find out more. We have some exciting announcements there. But it comes down to four things, continuing to build how you secure products and services, championing best practices for our customers, because if security is no good if nobody uses it. So those best practices
right.
are important. Helping to elevate the industry in from an identity security perspective. And then we are committing to continue to strengthen our corporate infrastructure, because we want to be kind of like a beacon for every other vendor out there to say, hey, this is what best in class looks like when it comes to security overall. So, a lot of the Doctor for Good announcements are going to be connected to the secure identity commitment. And that's like a foundational principle now that connects everything in
Yeah.
Okta, including all that security stuff we were discussing earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And it's gotta be, right? You're gonna manage those identities and as central we've been talking about how central they are. Yeah, yeah, it's a must.
It's a must. I mean, we have a we know we're the leader, but we take that very seriously, and we have a responsibility to the industry at large. So we don't take that lightly.
Well, we have a discount code for people listening, that want to attend. I think we're still about a month out, correct? from the event? I think it's
Yes,
mid
yes.
October.
It's
Mhm.
mid-October. I mean, in my timeline, it's tomorrow. That's the urgency at which we operate because it's
Right.
it's a different game inside. But yes, we're about a month out. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think it's October 15th through 17th, and there's an online portion as well, that's on the 16th, and that's free, but if you want to attend in person, you can go to securityweekly.com/octane 2024, and, the discount code we've got for you is OKTNSC24. For only $100, you get a full conference pass, which is a pretty good deal. I looked at the normal price on the website, so that's a great deal. And yeah, it looks like it's gonna be a lot of fun. Harish, thank you for, joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today.
Thank you for having me, and for everyone that's watching, look forward to seeing you at Octane.
All right, next up, we're gonna find out what it's like to secure a Formula One team with Darren Guccione from Keeper Security and Harold Wilson from Williams Grand Prix Engineering.